أعوند وشميا نتقداش شماخ تأتي ملكوتاخ نهوي سوينخ إكند وشميا أبر حاولان لحمة سنقان يومنا واشوقلان حوبين إكند بحنان شوقا لحيوين لا تان نسيونا إلا قصا من بيشة مثل دي لاخي ملكوثة حي لو تشبحته العالم عالمين آمين. So I wanted to, I don't know if how many of you attended this last weekend session with Dr. Eriko about discipleship of Christ. And during that session, he mentioned something that hit me really hard. I'm reading a bunch of books that are questioning even questioning religion, but at the same time, they know that there is something, but somewhere between empirical evidence and physical things and total spiritual, mystical realms. There is somewhere in between that we continue to search, and our scientists continue to work towards figuring out these things, and we constantly change our scientific theories. We constantly change. Religion changes, and actually, one of the questions I got last time was about the God of hosts, which I will touch on that either during the Q&A or during my talk. We'll see how Spirit takes me. But ultimately, and if we take the extremes and put Jesus somewhere where he saw those extremes, and he wanted to come up with something that to get us not necessarily closer to God. His understanding of God, again, when I talk about God, I'll address that a little bit. But what Jesus saw, that the core problem of humanity is that we are not getting along. We're letting all the things that separate us rule us. We're letting blind ambition and greed basically control everything. So a lot of the systems that were in existence at the time of Jesus and continue to exist and actually co-opted some of Jesus's core messages, and we're still in existence now in those systems. We call them political systems. We call them ideologies like socialism, Marxism, Leninism, Maoism. I mean, there are so many isms, and every now and then we face, like we are facing in our times now, some extreme religious movements. We also see some extreme nationalistic movements. We see some race-based movements. We continue to like intellectually develop these ideas and corner ourselves away from the rest of humanity into these political parties, as I said, religious systems, and we tear at even some within those same movements. If you look at their history, and if you look into their future, they're going to look exactly like everybody before them who did come in. And they initially agreed, and then on 1 point or 2 points or 5 points, they separated. We saw that in the Catholic movement. What was the dominant Christian movement, Western or Roman Catholic movement? Some of the followers of that movement had issues with the way the Catholics were defining things and running things, that they decided to split away from them, and then we got the Protestant movement, and then from there we see how many systems also splintered off the Catholic movement, and then other systems that started with a core Protestant movement that was anti-Catholic or had some issues with some Catholic beliefs, that then eventually they started arguing with each other, and we have a ton of churches in this country more than anywhere else. I've noticed if you drive down one of the major streets, and you go the full distance, I am positive you will find more than one church on that street. And the likelihood of finding maybe 7 or 8 is common, and some are mega, and some are a little home or a meeting room and a shopping center. So why do we continue to, in movements that try to unite our humanity, moved away from getting away from that, and continue to find those separations? So I want to take a second here. That the chats just blew up here, so I want to make sure that you can hear me and there isn't. Okay, so these are some questions, and okay, so I'll deal with those when we get there. So what was the Jesus system? I'm going to start talking about the Jesus system, because there is a system, and that system is hard to grasp. But once you grasp it, once you pick it up, mainly in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and a little bit in John. John is tricky because it was written for people who already bought into the movement. But the early movement, the Jesus time here, I was even reflecting on my work with Dr. Errico and this realm. It's like I've been doing this since the late 90s. But I started in the late 90s, and I've taught many classes, and my ministry morphed and changed, and I spoke with different groups and different churches, and now settling on Wednesday evenings. But I've been doing this for over 20 years, and Jesus's ministry, most people think, or most scholars think, it's lasted somewhere around 3 years, and if we stretch it, maybe 7, maybe 10. So I've been talking about Jesus and studying Jesus longer than his ministry. The person Jesus lasted with his work. So why do we do that? And what was his core system? Core system of Jesus was about, not as much about developing a relationship with God, the deity that Israel had developed. It was taking the human condition of his time, analyzing it, and finding a way to break through all the barriers that humanity suffers from and suffered from at his time. They're not different at all. Greed is still there. Nationalism is still there. Distrust of others is still there. Envy is still there. All these things are things that get developed, and I'm not going to go into each one of them and explain how it's developed, because it varies on the stage of life, the culture you grew up in, your own influences. That's what's neat about our humanity, and that what Jesus very quickly grasped and was able to see that variety. So we don't all get there at the same time. We don't grow up in the same house, go to the same school, in the same culture, and get the same exact teachings. The bulk of us, or in groups, have the same influences, but we also perceive them differently. Something might be very positive, and athletic. We join a team. The athletes of us will get a very positive experience out of that, and they'll become, the heroes of the town. And some people will be the failures, the people who could not compete in that specific sport. So then, so it's not everybody who joined the team is going to have the same perception. So if you think about the millions of probabilities, to take the Jesus system and put it there, it has to fit everybody. And that's the trick of the Jesus system, is that you individually need to figure out how you got where you got when you actually join the kingdom of God, which is what he labeled his, let's call it a club, right? Or a philosophy, or a what did I call them? Like all these different systems, ideology, I won't call it a religion because it was never intended to be a religion. So you joined the Jesus Club of the Kingdom, and you go like, okay, I'm a member now. What do I do? Well, the first thing you need to do is to understand the foundational truths of that club. Okay, and they are written in the Gospels, and I've been talking about them for the last few months and probably throughout my ministry. And that's why I hope that I don't sound like I'm repeating myself constantly, but really that core, because of its variety, it's so important for us to continue to talk about it, because every time you come here or somebody new joins us, which I'm hoping there are a few more people who continue to join as our message is spreading, you need to figure out how those rules, those foundational rules, apply to you, and you need to start working with them one by one, and it's a lifetime worth of work. So I know it doesn't sound, like you can go join a church and they'll tell you Jesus died on the cross and wiped out all your, just a sec. Rabbi, you're on video. Can you? Okay. Okay, sorry. Dr. Erico joined us and his video was on. At least I could see it, so I don't know. But so that lifetime, I was talking about some systems. You join, you believe in Jesus, you accept in Jesus Christ as your Savior, wipes out all your sins that you came in with. And if you continue to believe in Jesus as the Son of God or as God himself, then you can go every week and say, hey, I believe in this system. Anything I did wrong before is gone. And that's very simple, very straightforward. And the first time you do it, most likely your life is going to, you'll feel like you're on fire. And I've been in those settings. I did not experience it because I was constantly coming to searching, not looking for that moment. But I have experienced the moment itself, and that came during when I started digging deeper and deeper into the system of Jesus. So you can go also in other, like one of the questions I received and I did not answer last time, so I'll answer it now. The concept of purgatory, that developed. There are bits and pieces in the Bible that you can take and maybe develop that theory, I'll call it, because that's what the Catholic Church did, and they built an economy on it. It wasn't just a matter of you landed, you died, and then you landed in somewhere, and in your transition to possibly heaven or hell, but sometimes you got stuck there. And they sold the story that we, the living ones, can almost like buy out via prayer and via financial contributions and support of the church. We can buy out people out of that hell or that holding zone to push them on to their destination, hopefully heaven. Again, religious system. But the Bible is massive. I mean, I was just this thing, and I have a lot of flags and markers in it. It has a lot of things in it. It has many versions of God. So here comes Jesus with this history that's ahead of him, and then he looks at his time and is going like, we can't just keep going this way. So whether you believe in him as a prophet, as a son of God, as whatever you want to believe in, look into what he said. Look into his parables. Look into the things he spoke about. And that I'm hoping that you keep coming to these sessions with Dr. Erico and with me to get those guidance points, so you can go and figure out how that's going to work for you. The concept, he gave a concept of forgiveness, which is different than any of the ones that a lot of churches sell you today. His forgiveness is about releasing. He's using his core language, Aramaic, when he said shwak. I said it in the Lord's Prayer, wash waklan haubain, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. There is your clue. forgiveness of your own issues begins by you working on forgiving everybody that you're holding something in your heart and in your mind against. So these are the people, and soul is timeless, and Jesus understood that timelessness of our soul. I saw this, and a lot of the people I grew up with were older and eventually transitioned. But I've always surrounded myself with people of all ages. I love hanging out with the youngest of young, and have been blessed with, like, literally almost the first breath. My sisters blessed me with that, with their children, at least some of my nieces and nephews. And I've also grew up babysat and so forth by. I was babysat by my grandmother and grandfather and so forth. So I saw something that we all observe, hopefully, in our lives. The people, you'll see that spirit has absolutely, it's us. Actually, if you don't have this Jesus system in your life, or some good grounding in your humanity and in your spirituality, you see that people, as they get closer to dying, they start questioning. It's like, the physical body is going to age, and we're making massive advancements. That's why you never speak against science, because thank goodness for all the things that science is giving us. They're giving us tremendous technologies to prolong our life, lessen our pain, make our transitions more peaceful, and so forth. Plus, in the years that we're alive, we're getting bionic hips, or titanium hips, and new knees and new shoulders. A lot of my friends keep playing soccer because when they fall apart, the medicine and the science is putting them back together, sometimes better than they were, or back to how they were 20, 30 years ago, and they keep running. So we have this awesome opportunity to continue to advance in science, and yet start working better with each other. And I think that's the trick of Jesus. His spirituality was about his humanity, and his system was about the day-to-day existence. How do you make yourself happy? How do you relieve yourself from fear? How do you relieve yourself from anxiety, from depression? Those are our issues that we deal with. And sometimes we don't want to deal with them, so we turn them right around and upset everybody who comes in contact with us, because we don't want to look in the mirror and solve those problems. He had those clues, and I'm saying that you have to do it by yourself. He knew that all these things have to happen with a community of believers. You need to surround yourself by people who think and act from that space, who have your best interest, because they understand that you are a part of them and they are a part of you. That's the passion of Jesus. So back to what Dr. Errico was talking about, and I'm happy if you have questions about the system, throw them at me. But so Dr. Errico was talking about the parable of the pearl, and that's I'm going to go ahead and read it, because it's one of those very short, like one verse parables. So I cut two verses. So this is Matthew chapter 13, verse 45 and 46. Again, and this is in a row, like he goes like, and the kingdom, and the kingdom, and the kingdom. But this one, and the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant who is searching for precious pearls. Then, so the kingdom is like a precious pearl that you are looking for. Okay, so hopefully you're here today because you found it. Now, this is what the pearl is going to do to you. Then when he found an expensive pearl, the one he was looking for, he went and sold all that he had and purchased it. There's another one about a field and a treasure. Same concept. So what was Jesus really teaching us here? What was he talking about? What is this pearl that, dragged me in whatever it was, 1999, 1998, and it flipped my life, flipped my perspective. I was searching, and now I found something, and it wasn't like I found it and I put it in my pocket and I moved on. It now possesses me. That kingdom, that the working for the kingdom and in the kingdom and being a part of the kingdom, it possesses you. That's what the pearl did to that merchant. He had to basically go bankrupt, sell everything. Of course, when he said merchant, everybody knew that Jesus is talking about somebody wealthy. Merchants typically, if you think 2,000 years ago, somebody who actually owned the business, most likely was well off. Yet he sacrificed all that, all his pride, all. He sold all, took all that money and put it into the kingdom. So now the kingdom bankrupts you, takes away all the things that you held dear to your life, and now is going to replace them with something totally different, something that is based on your humanity, something based on community that supports you and you support it. You start undoing the stuff that society has been instilling in you all this time. So now that you possess the pearl, or the pearl possesses you, you have to start working with concepts like forgiveness, concepts like loving your enemy. But even before, I know loving your enemy is one of those controversial teachings of Jesus, because a lot of people have I've seen people make tremendous progress in the kingdoms and in the kingdom's teachings, and then they run into love your enemy, and it's hard. It is so hard, because your enemy, typically, whatever your enemy's form is, has a hold of all your spots, all the buttons, and they will count. Now, whether that your enemy is somebody you know, or it's on a nationalistic level, or on a party political belief system, or somebody in the office that pesters you and makes your life hell, that's the enemy. So whoever the enemy is, and you probably have a combination of all of the above, you need to figure out what are those points, those buttons that the enemy keeps pushing in you, whether you're watching TV or you're interacting with them in the office or whatever, whoever that person is or entity is. You need to figure out, how do I neutralize that? You have it in the teachings of Jesus. All those things are custom made for you. And that's why I said in the beginning, it is not a system where we all can, wear this type of shirt and that type of hat and shave our beards in a specific way, or put specific earrings on, whatever it is that a lot of people end up trying to do to create the club look. There is no club look. For Jesus, it's going to be you undoing everything that was done with your participation, typically. And then so undoing all of that, and then becoming a representative of the kingdom. And hopefully you get to do it. The quicker you do it, the happier, the more peaceful you'll be. But you have to do the work, and the reward, the promise is, the reward you start feeling a chemical change. You start feeling a happiness and a peace of mind that you can't imagine, because we're not very aware of it when we're young and we're taken care of. If you had the blessing of having a family and an early unit in your life that took care of you, teachers that constantly were positive with you, were encouraging you, were finding the talents that you're good at and not putting you in situations where you had a lot of struggle and failure, or when they did, they nurtured you enough to go through that, so you got the learning you need to do. That's the kind of thing that the kingdom is going to give you at any stage when you join it. That's the feeling, and the community is so important. I was talking to somebody, I think it was last week, about the community, and initially you will need that supportive community to carry you, but as you grow, as you become able to teach, and the teaching is not like what I'm doing right now. Hopefully a lot of you will be blessed and not have to do this. In me, that's part of what my role is. So, and I accepted it, and sometimes I resist it. And you can ask Dr. Eriko next time with one of your questions. How does Hanny resist working? But ultimately, you start participating, you start doing the work, you start dealing. Now you've given us right now. You've given the kingdom your most precious asset, time. Right? You come here every week and you spend an hour with us. And hopefully you spend more time going and referencing what we talked about, and hopefully you get excited and you tell your friends about it or your family about it. I learned this thing, or more quietly, I'm doing this work and I'm gonna, show you how I'm becoming better. So time is your most precious, in this experience, it's your most precious asset, and you're giving it up for the kingdom. I do the same. I spend hours the day I talk, the day before, the day, and many times I get awakened sometimes in the middle of the night with thoughts, and I either write them down or I try to remember them the next day. So it becomes part of your existence. But the goal of it, it's not a building. It's not the goal of it is for you to have a really good life, and to change the whole society, the whole community, the whole universe to the better, to bring it back into this enlightened state of knowing that we are in this together. And it will create struggle, because a lot of our jobs drag us into competitive situations that sometimes we take for granted. We don't think about them. And if we thought about them, a lot of us would quit our jobs, which would put a lot of burden on us. And that's not the intent. This is not what's intended. Now, if you find yourself in that position, again, go deep and look for opportunities and think, what would be the job that would make me use all my talents, bring as much money, because money is important in this journey. But I'd be happy with, I'd be reconciled, I'd be making something or working in a field, and not all of us will have that option. I know that. So and I've been in that situation. So I'm not an exception of, like, I've always been in jobs where I'm like, making angels and giving kids balloons on their birthdays. I am not there. But do you see how you shifting and you reflecting, you don't become this robot that's programmed by whatever, all the different factors that made you who you are, that makes you unhappy. Instead, you start removing those shackles, working with the Jesus system, and then slowly you become this free, present person, this beautiful spirit that you are. And I know it because I see it in the people who recognize it, and in the people who are on their way to recognize it. And I can't judge, because there is no measuring stick. I can't just hold like something next to you and go like, oh, you're right here, and one day you'll be here. You'll fluctuate. Some areas of your life will be in heaven, and then you feel like something slips and you're going like, okay, how do I fix, where did that one come from? Oh, something was said to me or done to me, or this person that made me feel a specific way some 20 years ago. I just saw a picture of them, or an update on LinkedIn or on Facebook. So that's the essence of the kingdom. It's a system custom made for each one of us. It capitalizes on each of our talents, but then it unites us in a way where, when we start working together, whether we know each other or not, things will feel good. We'll be producing things in our society, in our lifetime, that change the core way we think about competition, with the core way we think about wealth, the core way we think about nationality and nationalism. It will change it. And at the same time, it will allow us to embrace the people who are still finding their way. Because everybody I know, that there are very, very few people, and you can see Jesus sometimes got really frustrated with some people during his ministry when they accused him of like, you heal in the name of Beelzebub, like you basically, or in the name of Satan. What you're doing is evil. It's like, how can I be working on healing and then through a power that by its nature, or not by its nature, by the way we define it, is negative and is there to destroy and discomfort. So that's when Jesus said, okay, you're just being troublemakers for the sake of being troublemakers. And if you continue to do that way, you'll always basically suffer from that. That's your curse, that's your hell. So that's really the core message that I wanted to cover today, is that You found something, you're here, whether you're in person listening to this live or when I post it on YouTube, you hear it. You found something and it's possessing you now. Now, what do you do with it? And how do you make yourself better, happier? And how do you then start spreading and moving from somebody who's just sucking from the kingdom and trying to, you know, get back into wholeness and happiness and becoming love, and then becoming love and spreading that love to everybody who has the blessing of knowing you or knowing somebody that you know. So how am I doing on time? I have no idea. I didn't even turn my phone off. Okay. So let me now jump totally to a different space, and hopefully if the questions are in this space, it's going to be hard for me to get into the same level, but we'll see how it goes. So one of the questions, and it really sent me into a lot of research, is this came last week. What is the origin and meaning of God as the quote unquote God of hosts? What or who are the hosts? Well, the term is mentioned many places in the Bible, but the basic thing, and Dr. Errico covers it in one of his commentaries, I think it's in this one, yeah. Aramaic Light on Joshua through 2 Chronicles, volume 3, this one. But in it, you know, the footnotes and so forth, you start looking at it, and it will take you different places. As I said, the God of Jesus was a special. I mean, Jesus was so in touch with his humanity and understood the prophets so well that he knew that the God they were talking about, this Ithia Rabba that I talk about, Dr. Errico talks about, this presence in the universe and in our lives that is just there to take care of us and to love us. It's like pure love, pure acceptance, all inclusive, does not prefer one person over another, and would never, ever, ever hurt anybody, much less kill somebody as beautiful as Jesus was. So if we establish that this is the God of Jesus, the God of hosts was one of the stages. Actually, it pops up multiple times. Israel, the people, so Abraham came, and Abraham was Aramean. He did not label himself as I'm a Jew or anything like that. He was an Aramean man, a nomad who left Mesopotamia and landed in what we call today Palestine, the Holy Land, the land of Canaan, whatever you want to call it. Okay, the land doesn't care, that piece of earth. He landed there, and there were other people there, but he navigated, and that's 2,000 years ago, to leave your tribe and your people and go across deserts and land and other people's nations or what they claimed as their lands is a very dangerous task. His wisdom and his love for humanity landed him peacefully there. And he wasn't the highest of the high as far as like ranking in his area, because he had to obey and pay tribute and so forth for some of the more powerful tribal people around there. But bottom line, he's the one who we attribute what we call monotheism to. So the Jewish religion today, the Judaism, Christianity in all its forms, Islam in all its forms, and Judaism in all its forms. So none of them really have like one version of it, but they all tend to reference Abraham's God as the God who made the universe present, and basically dismisses the idea of any other gods in existence, because at the time, and we have a bias, or we have a blessing in the West, specifically in the West, in that as Christianity spread, initially it was resisted in the West, but once the Byzantine Empire picked it up, the religion as the state religion, and it made it one and the same. The king or the emperor is part of God's kingdom and is basically bestowed with that title by God. This is what they made it seem like. Then the West very quickly got absorbed and with the threat of death, spread Christianity and everybody became Christian. So by the time Christianity dominated Europe and eventually Latin America through colonialism and North America and so forth, that we didn't deal with some of what the Bible describes, the struggles of Israel and the struggles of early Christianity even. And even if you think the Prophet Muhammad came in the year 610 to 13, and he was dealing with multiple gods or idol worship. So those were the two systems that were battling in the Middle East. That's why when we talk about the Bible and we try to think of it in a Western way, it's very hard to reconcile, and we tend to like either read into it or skip it altogether and just trust that the minister is telling us the truth, because it's hard to actually grasp that. And by the way, just as a plug, Rebecca is still doing those classes. I don't know if it's too late to register, but I would join her mailing list, because she's covering some of the stuff that Dr. Errico and I covered for many years as foundational pieces of this work. So if you're coming in a bit later and you haven't been exposed to the 7 keys and the book, Dr. Errico's books, Let There Be Light and There Was Light, those are very fundamental in just helping you seeing things in the Bible from an Eastern perspective. So back to the Bible, those are the powers that were constantly at push-pull. Egypt had gods, the god of the sun and the god of war and the god of this and the god of that, and the pharaohs were representing those gods. And at different points, different gods won over, like the temple priests and so forth, priestesses, beat the other temple, the other gods' people, and the new pharaohs adopted that god. So it was, they knew there is something different, unseen, and that was early religion. Mesopotamia had their gods, and when when Abraham found this God that's invisible, omnipresent, omniscient, and loving and caring, that was the beginning. That was like the baby version of the God of Jesus, but it's very close. Then over time, we see that God, so the God of hosts, by the time we read about the God of hosts, which is in Genesis and in different places, Isaiah talks about it. It was, the word hosts is almost like a title, and it was to provoke God's help, to ask for, when they use it in the Bible, typically you'll see it in the context of either honoring God or typically in relation to helping the Israelites fight a battle against some other people who had different gods. So even that God was not the type of big God. The Jewish people believed in him, but sometimes throughout their history, they had issues with God, and God had issues with them. If you read the Bible closely, or like Noah's story, where God regretted creating humanity altogether and wanted to just wipe it clean, but thanks to him, or thanks to God, that it has no gender. He saved Noah and a few other things and kept the earth going. So Lord of Hosts is sometimes it's understood as just a title. Sometimes it references, they thought God had angels and had those angels help them in battle. So again, in the context of armies and so forth, the blessings of the God of hosts help them defeat maybe bigger, stronger enemies, or in terrain that they were not familiar with, because God sent these invisible troops with them and strengthened them. So the hosts became kind of like the angels and the different entities in God's realm. So those are, sometimes it's taken that way. The Aramaic word, and I looked it up, and from Aramaic to Arabic, it's basically says the capable God is a translation, but it had the actual word, which in Arabic, Aramaic, and Hebrew is about the same. I have it up here. It's it's like it sounds like in Arabic it's Sabaut, or it's Sawut, or SWAT, and hopefully I'm not slaughtering it in the two other languages. So it's just a like almost a title for God. So, but I wanted to mention it in the context of the God of Jesus, which was he called him the Father, beloved, as the beloved, as the one, and he described God's qualities, and didn't spend a lot of time on creating a theology like we did. As soon as Jesus died, the church, and especially 300 years later, and when the Romans joined Christianity, they wanted a belief system and so forth that is similar to the Roman and Greek way of thinking, with logic and with rules and so forth. That's where we get the belief systems. Jesus didn't spend time. He spent more time teaching his apostles how to get along with one another, how to spread the news about the kingdom, how not to get into traps of people from other religions or authority, how not to get in trouble with the tax collectors who wanted money, and if you said no, they called you a rebel and killed you. So his system was very, very, very human. And it works. It just, I mean, there is a reason why 2,000 years later we're talking about it, even though today's Christianity has piled a whole bunch of, I'll say, crap on top of his basic message, and he almost disappears into this Christianity. And even in the debate, when I read the scholars, as I said, I was reading a bunch of stuff, and just because of the questions I've been receiving and so forth, and a lot of it is like, foundationally, I can't even dislike the writers or disagree with the writer, because there's the point of departure is so far away from Jesus. And it's so Western in a lot of the Western scholars that I'm reading some Near Eastern scholars as well, but their point of departure is so far away from Jesus that it makes it hard to even, it's like a house with no foundation. Jesus talked about that. They have not bothered enough or had the blessing to actually go and find that foundation. And then I would love to debate the system of Jesus against any system or any book written against Christianity, the Jesus Christianity, not the Pauline Christianity, not the churchianity that we live in now or at any stage of history. Those golden years and the years when the movement spread from home to home, from person to person, those were the years where, and it caught fire. It wasn't like spreading slowly, like, I see a lot of churches here going through books and so forth of how to recruit more people, how to bring more revenue to the church, how to increase tithing. And they go through like a year program or a 5-year program, or we want to add 10% or 20% to our membership. And it's all about membership. It's all about get them excited about Jesus for whatever their messaging, and then try to keep them there, maybe guilt them into being there, whatever it is. And those are good people. I know, and I've gone to a lot of churches in my time. That I can't say a bad thing about the people themselves. They're passionate, they love it, but they're seeking something. And more often than not, Jesus is not there, is missing. And if they would introduce that, and that's my ask of you. If you go to church, don't stop going to church, please, because you need community. But if you do go to church, be that sound, be that voice that says, hey, minister, can we talk about Matthew, the parable of the pearl? What does it mean? Let's talk about that. Let's not go to Corinthians. Let's not go to the epistle of the Romans or Adam and Eve. That's not where Jesus went. Jesus went into the Lord's Prayer. What does it mean? Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Let's chat about that. Let's make this Sunday and the next 3 Sundays about that. And that's where you'll introduce change. That's when you'll make people think, oh, that Jesus dude, he was thinking at a different level. and then come to us with your questions. And not that we have all the answers. We probably can at least get you that to the right point of the Bible, the right references and so forth, to help you get it for you, so you can start your own ministry, your own healing, your own life, and enjoying it. So with that said, hopefully I answered the questions that I had from last week. Oh, there was one more question. Let me see if the person who asked it is here, because I want to answer it. They might hear the recording, so I'll go ahead. Why was there a symbol of the snake of the created cross Moses created? What was it symbolic? What was its symbolic meaning, and why a snake of all animals? So the question is referring to the story where when Moses was guiding the tribes in the desert and they were lost, one of the things that they ran into is an area, a valley where it had a lot of, I say a valley, it's just an area in the desert where it had a lot of snakes. And they were not aware, they were lost. So they were walking, and then all of a sudden they started getting bitten by these snakes, and these snakes were poisonous, and the bite was very painful, and some of them died. So Moses did something, which he created a snake from brass, so an image of that snake, and then put it on a post and carried it, almost like crucifying the snake. And that had a powerful psychological probably influence. Some scholars think it might have had some medical, like the brass itself. But when people got bitten, they looked at this snake that Moses was holding, and they would heal, or they would not die, and that the poison, and more importantly, their fear of the snake. It's almost like, I killed the snake symbolically with carrying it on this, like crucified it basically, that their fear stopped. The symbolic value, the meaning, the Jewish people throughout the Bible, actually there is a part later in, I think it's in 2 Kings, 1 Kings or 2 Kings chapter 18, I believe, where the Jewish people now took that symbol, think of it, and actually think of our healing, the medical symbol of the snakes around the cup. That comes from that story in the Bible. So it became a symbol of healing. But at one point, that the Moses snake on the stick, on the staff, became a god to the Israelites. So remember, I said they're not always praying for this one omnipresent, the God of Abraham and the God of Jesus. Throughout their history, they sometimes, even when Moses went up to get the 10 Commandments, he took too much time talking to God and figuring out how to organize his society, that when he came down, they took their gold, they melted it, they created a calf, and they started praying to that calf. So they immediately created an idol. So when we think of the Bible, hopefully your ministers, and if you grew up in any of the traditions that I talked about, that they covered these things, because they are foundational if you want to understand how God evolved, how religion evolved, how it wasn't really meant to be bound. And there isn't, as I said, there isn't like one God in here, and it was never intended to be put into these folds. Dr. Ergo talked about those first Christians that were spreading the kingdom like fire. They didn't have any books. They probably had, a little note, a little scroll of one of the parables, one of the stories about Jesus. But then it's a culture that's very oral, so they remember these things and they pass them that way. The stories got passed that way. And sometimes when the scribes went to write the story about Jesus, the versions that we received, sometimes they added stuff to it, an explanation that they heard from the teller of the story, not from Jesus, but the person, how that person perceived it. So that's part of why I say, if you have not taken the foundational classes with us, and there's an opportunity with Rebecca or with Dr. Eriko, myself, whoever. There are some churches also do it locally. So if you have the blessing, or just buy the book, read it, and then come to us. You have our attention when we say, ask us questions. So you could say, hey, and I'm reading this part of this book, and what does it really mean? Or I'm struggling in understanding what it means. So those are the questions that I had. So now let me look at the ones from today. How much time do I have left? Oh God, 8 minutes. I'm gonna have to, most likely I'm gonna have to answer some of these later, but let's give it a shot. If Bray Dinasha is son of man, how is Bray Dalaha godlike? A very, very good question. So the person is asking, Bray Dinasha, Bray Dalaha is usually used either to describe Jesus or sometimes by Jesus himself. So the thing about this is that there is no difference. In Jesus's mind, humans were created in the image and likeness of God. That's from Genesis. This is from the beginning of the Torah. So that's very foundational in Jesus's understanding of God and the relationship between God and man. So now, if you say if God created us in the image and likeness of what we call, let's say the Ithya Rabba, Allah, and then so if I call you son of man, is taking those qualities that you received from God in the image and likeness. And if I call you son of God, then I'm skipping that step. I'm saying in the image and likeness of God. So both reference the same point. That's why it wasn't a big deal for him. Now, when he went down to Judea and they said, you're calling yourself the son of God, and oh my God, when Christianity took a hold of it and we tried to make sense of it in the West, then it became a big, big debate of what does it mean? Was he really the son of God? Or did he have one nature, two natures? And we made a mess out of it. It's a term that Jesus used to humble himself typically, and to put the pressure on himself and on others to behave like God behaved. And he described that. See, that's the Jesus system. What does God do with the birds? They don't have to worry about drinking or eating. They find water and they find shelter. What does he do with flowers? Gives them all the beauty. This is how Jesus was describing this God. And then he said, his son, the warmth, the rain, God gives it to all humanity. There is no discrimination in God because we're all the children of God. So that's very key. I'm glad you asked the question. There is no difference between the two. Now, your question is very specific. It's like, how come we say that it's, is God, one is God-like and one is son of man or son of a human being. It's the same. It's God-like applies to both. So if I call you a true human being, what a human being, well, son of David, you hear that in the Bible, oh, son of David, even the reference that with Jesus. It's invoking kind of like you are in the line of these great ones who have done great works. So have mercy on me, or help me heal, or teach me, or something like that. So again, it's a Near Eastern way of saying, and we say it today. In my culture, we say Ya Ibn Allah, which means oh son of God. We say that to one another. Usually, when you invoke that in a conversation, in my culture, which has been used with me, and I used it is basically saying, how could you be a son of God and behave this way? Okay, so ease up, take it easy, or be kind, or something like that. So I'm reminding you that you are the son of God too, and you need to behave like that. So that's the meaning of it. But then it got lost. It became a doctrine. It became theology, and we lost that simplicity of it. It's again, once you learn the system of Jesus, it's very simple, very straightforward. Okay, this one I'm going to have to do next time. Song of Songs from the Old Testament. And Dr. Errico does a great job. It was my grandfather's favorite book in the Bible because it had a lot of kind of hidden meanings and so forth. So it's maybe we'll do a whole session on it. Why are they in the Bible? That's the very question. What are they about, and why are they in the Bible? So that's the thing about, you know, the canon. I in a way I did answer that, is that there are things that added something to whoever was compiling the canon. And to this day, not all canons are equal. Some churches still exclude things that other churches include because it fits their theology, their agenda, their program ultimately. So why specifically that one? It's a beautiful story. It's a story of compassion, love of God. So just like a lot of the Psalms, you know, they have meaning, but sometimes they are vibrating at a much lower level, like at where Jesus was, and some were tribal. I mean, we have a lot of stories where prophets are mass killing people out of revenge or ordering their own nation. These are very enlightened prophets, but they're growing up in tribal mindset. So that even though they had some enlightened moments, they had some moments that did not respect humanity, or they matched the energy of their enemy and could rationalize because they had a different god or different tribal origin or something like that, to go and kill not only the people, but kill their even animals and trees and so forth. There are a lot of examples in the Bible like that. Moses himself slaughtered a bunch of Egyptian kids, you know, to kind of put the fear of God into the Egyptians and have them release them and allow them to leave. They came the next day and said, get out, you take your people and go. You're ruthless. We don't want to deal with you. So the Bible is full of these stories, and not that to say the Song of Songs is that, but in general, every time you're reading section in the Bible, a section in the Bible, and sometimes a section within a section, you need to ask yourself, what am I reading? Why am I reading it? Why is it here? Does it apply to the Jesus system? So that's why I live in the Jesus system, because there is a lot of stuff in the Bible I can do without. It's important for me to understand it so I can explain where it's coming from and what it means, because people like to know that. But in general, you can live without really worrying about those things and yet have a happy, fulfilled, complete life. So I'll highlight that one, and I'll talk to Dr. Errico about maybe putting a session around the Song of Songs. How are we doing on time? Okay, at this time. So I'm not gonna. As I said, your biggest asset, the thing that you probably hold most precious, hopefully, is time. Is your, you know, the time you spend with us. And to honor that, I usually try to finish on time. So I'll take your questions, and hopefully they'll guide me through my next talk. In the meantime, we love you. Remember that you might be getting new links, but maybe not for next week, but the week after. So keep a close eye on emails from the foundation. And we really appreciate your support and your love offerings. They keep us going. They keep this whole operation moving forward. And we know we do this with no expectation. This is from your heart. And there's absolutely no obligation. So until next time, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.